Good morning, everyone. As requested, I'm going to do a little bit of a review on Chapter 2, the review questions. If you look in your book, you'll see that there's 10 review questions. It's going to be a very brief summary, so to speak, of the review questions. Obviously, I don't want to give you all the answers, so let's get started. By the way, I hope everyone's doing well. We're keeping our social distancing and taking care of family members and each other. Don't forget, isolate as much as you can. Keep your groupings to very small groups and our social distancing. And like I said on Monday at the meeting, wash your hands. If we do all that, we'll get through this and we'll have something to talk about when you're old and gray. Okay, so looking at the book, first review question for Chapter 2. What are the primary duties of an engine company, ladder company, and a rescue squad? As I mentioned on an earlier video, engine companies primarily perform firefighting duties, fire extinguishment. Ladder companies or truck companies primarily do ventilation, either vertical or horizontal ventilation. They also perform search and rescue. Both engine and truck companies are always available to perform medical aid calls, medical type calls. They may or may not be paramedic equipped. And rescue and squad companies, your rescue companies do just what it says. They're there for rescue. And your squads could be anything from lighting, scene lighting to breathing support squad. They could be, some places actually have salvage squads, things like that. Squads are a very small unit, generally 2 people. Typical duties of a firefighter. Well, as a firefighter, which is entry level, your job is to do all the work. That's basically what a firefighter does. You're also expected to constantly train. You have goals. You have training goals that are set for you as a brand new firefighter. You have a probationary period as a firefighter. So the biggest thing that you have to know about being a firefighter is to follow directions, constantly train, and be ready to go at all times. Something you'll see likely in your quiz is something called the NFPA 1001, which is a standard that identifies minimum job performance requirements for career and volunteer firefighters whose duties are structural in nature. So structured firefighters have certain duties and skills that they have to be able to perform under the National Fire Protection Association Standard 1001. So remember that. You'll see that again. Moving right along, duties of a fire apparatus driver / operator, or predominantly in the Central Valley at least, driver operators are referred to as engineers. In CAL FIRE, your civil service title is fire apparatus engineer. In the CAL FIRE system, engineers are company officers. And in the absence of the captain in the fire station, if you're in a 2-engine house, if you could be in charge of the station. So it's sort of an on-the-job training for CAL FIRE captains or engineers to become company officers. Another NFPA standard that you need to understand and look out for, NFPA 1002, the standard for fire apparatus driver operators professional qualifications. So NFPA 1002. Let's see. What's the review question 4? What is the difference between a company officer and a battalion district chief? A company officer is generally a captain. Or again, in the CAL FIRE system, a company officer is an engineer. But on the broad sense of company officers are captains. A battalion chief a captain is in charge of a piece of equipment in a fire station. They may have two pieces in a fire station, a ladder and an engine, so you would likely have two captains in the station. In the system I'm familiar with, in a two-engine fire station in the wildland, you would have a captain on one engine, an engineer on the other, and the captain is in overall charge of the fire station and everybody in it, including the engineer, who's basically an apprentice company officer. So NFPA standard 10,000 or 1021, NFPA 1021, standards for fire officer professional qualifications. It lays out the minimum job requirements for captain and battalion chief. Battalion chiefs have, as you'll find from your reading in the book, battalion chiefs have command of a certain geographic area, several fire stations, maybe as few as two fire stations. Battalion chiefs can also be in charge of things like a communication center, emergency command centers, training bureaus. In the CAL FIRE system, you have a battalion chief that's in charge of an inmate camp. So BCs can have different jobs other than field jobs. They have what's called staff jobs. Training division, review question 5. Training division is usually staffed by captains, who are the instructors, the main instructors, and a battalion chief who's in overall charge of the training bureau. Sometimes you'll find engineers working in the training bureau. It just depends on the jurisdiction, who's actually in the training bureau. So there's an NFPA standard for that too. You'll find throughout this book that there are NFPA standards for everything. The NFPA standard for training bureau folks is NFPA 1041, standard for fire and emergency service instructor professional qualifications. So there's actually classes that you take in California through the state fire marshal's training that teach you how to be an instructor. There's things that you have to be able to carry forward as an instructor. Question number 6. What are some positions that assist in the administrative duties of fire department? So administrative duties, they include the chief of the department, division chiefs or assistant chiefs, everything from fire control to the mechanics at the shop, to the training bureau, to the warehouse, all have administrative duties. There's many people in a headquarters that actually support the folks in the field. So the administrative people are your secretaries and accountants, your division chiefs, the mechanics, maintenance mechanics. Those are all people that support the fire control people. Special operations personnel, that includes your over-the-bank rescue, heavy rescue, people like that. So when you're reading the book, you'll see that special operations, it's specialized training. It might be folks on a fireboat. It might be folks on a USAR team, an urban search and rescue team. In CAL FIRE, it's the air attack folks, the captains and battalion chiefs that fly around in the little airplane and direct the air tankers. Those are examples of special operations. Let's see, question number 8. How do the duties of first responder, EMTs, and paramedic differ? The differences. So paramedic in the medical world, the first responder world, is the highest medically trained individual on a piece of equipment. Some departments have paramedics on fire apparatus, ladders, or engines. Some have paramedics strictly on ambulances. Some have a combination of both. Some departments have 2 paramedics on a piece of equipment. Just depends on jurisdiction. EMT, which is what you folks have to accomplish before you can come to the academy, and I'm sure a number of you have already been or are going to the EMT school to become an emergency medical technician and get on the national registry. That's the next level. You're trained in certain skills. Basic life support is your job. And then first responder is just a fancy way of referring to somebody that's got a little more than basic first aid. You can do things like apply oxygen, more skills than your basic first aider would have. The ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation, first responders can take care of those duties as well. Question number 9 for review. Excuse me, had to itch my nose and I'm not supposed to touch my face. Question 9, what are the duties of telecommunications and dispatch personnel? So in the CAL FIRE system, it's a place called the Emergency Command Center, the ECC. Those folks are responsible for taking 911 calls and determining if it's a medical call, if it's a call for service of some kind, a broken hydrant, a gas leak, a cat up a tree, something like that, or a fire, whichever kind of fire it is. They also take orders for wildland fires. And then the biggest job for telecommunications is dispatching equipment and managing the dispatch of requested resources that an incident commander might have at the scene. It's actually a very pivotal job in the fire service. In the CAL FIRE system, you have a fire captain that's in charge of the shift and several communications operators. They used to be called dispatcher clerks, but in the last 10 years, they've changed their title to communications operators. There's also a battalion chief in charge of the command center. Here in Fresno County, there's an emergency command center out at the airport, and it's co-located with the Forest Service. So in the summertime, there's Forest Service dispatchers and CAL FIRE dispatchers in the same building. So, and they perform all the same functions, answering 911 calls, dispatching emergency equipment for whatever the call is. And finally, what are some typical duties of apparatus equipment maintenance personnel? So those are your mechanics. Your mechanics are versed in diesel and gasoline engine repair, all the stuff, brakes, fire pumps, all of the things that need to be repaired on occasion on your fire apparatus. They go to school to learn the various brands of fire pumps and apparatus, how to repair it. They get classes in for instance, trucks, ladders that have complicated equipment on it. They're all well trained in that. And they're generally, in CAL FIRE, there's a battalion chief that's in charge of the shop. In the CAL FIRE system, at least in Fresno County, the mechanics bring the breathing support to the fires. So they're always on call to bring a breathing support out. They also, you can find mechanics on the fire line. In wildland fires, they'll come out with a service unit and repair equipment that breaks down on the fire line. In the cities, you'll see mechanics come out to any incident, a fire incident, and take care of apparatus that may have a problem. So a couple of thoughts that I had about going over the chapter review with you folks is I'm going to give you just a short video. This one we're at 14 minutes right now. I'm going to give you little short videos on this information because I still want you to read the book. And again, your quizzes and your final are basically an open book test, but that doesn't relieve you of the responsibility of having to read the book and answer these questions so you can be successful on all of these quizzes, okay? So I'm going to call it good for this particular chapter. Don't forget, the PowerPoints are available to you guys to review. All the information you need is in the book and in the PowerPoints. Once again, I'm available to answer questions on email. And don't forget, Friday from starting at, I believe I started at 8 o'clock in the morning, you guys can start taking your quiz. You have until midnight Friday. And Monday morning, we'll have our meeting, our Zoom meeting at 9 a.m. Okay? All right. So, once again, take care of yourselves and your families. It's very important. I can't emphasize it enough that you guys stay isolated as much as you possibly can. Wash your hands and just keep your heads down. This will end sooner or later, but I don't want any of you guys to get sick. All right. So take care of each other, and I will see you guys Monday. All right. Have a great weekend and the rest of the week.